Hey folks, welcome to the Market Internal Review for August 9th, 2023. We're going to blast through this review. We started the morning with a very small gap day over day. Even though it's this small, it still provides ample signals and a potential resistance point. First part of the morning, we spent mostly in a consolidation. TiWAP is essentially flat as there is no tick breaks to the configured default value of 500 for sensitivity until much later in the morning. We get our first 500 at 10 o'clock, and then we go back into kind of this consolidation tick area. We do see a potential balance signal from TRIN, and it takes quite a long time to finally break out of that. I do think at this point most of the market is waiting for the CPI and PPI that come out tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Do be aware that that can have an impact on the markets. This consolidation zone took forever to break out. We don't really see it until almost 11 o'clock. Tick average closures going from below, over, under, zero, off and on. All morning we see a little bit of a divergence across the board for volume and price on the New York Stock Exchange. Even the 20 SMAs are flipping. There's dimming and brighting. It's just a bunch of range. So when you see that, just a good indication there's not much going on. Now at this point, being that TiWAP is flat, if you're wanting to scalp something like this, or you want to trade against something like this, let's say you've generated a bear bias because we've not been able to clear above this daily gap, and we are trading within yesterday's standard deviation range. We're at the high side and we're weak. So if you are a market internal TiWAP trader, you might think that the low end of previous day's range is something we'll trade into. It's completely valid to grab a piece of this action, even though TiWAP on the current session is nowhere to be found. You do that by using these target levels from TiWAP as scalp ranges. So in this case, I like to draw a simple 0.5 using the fib tool against these levels where I can look to insert myself. We see a break, retest, and break back down to the 0.5 between these two levels. So if you were to take that and you trim out here, maybe you hold a runner, you get about $2.50 on this move here. So that's a great trade setup, and it's completely valid because it's really close to yesterday's low price. So holding for something down that way is acceptable in my opinion for a strong entry such as this here. Some people will enter in a consolidation range. I personally don't like to do that. I have done it in the past, but anyways, when we get this breakdown too, you'll notice that TRIN is signaling an imbalance, which means price can run. And we also have a bear flip on the ad, which is our New York Stock Exchange advance and decline, and we already have a complete bear volume. Now, some other resources out there on YouTube and then books and different things, Market Internals volume analysis is given the higher weight when it comes to internal assessment for sentiment. So the volume already being incredibly bearish gives us a lot of confidence entering this short, even though TiWAP itself is kind of non-existent today. We have yesterday's TiWAP to thank for these wonderful levels. This bottom wick here, very strong. The wick low is 444.96. Look at this target level, 444.97. It was off by 1 cent. That's really incredible accuracy. Even these prices here, these price targets, seeing quite a lot of strength. We get a couple of wick lows here, testing that price again. Even this retest starts basically right on this price. We cram against the lower first deviation on TiWAP. Amazing setup. Once we break back into the first standard deviation low, notice TRIN is nowhere to be seen. So when TRIN is non-existent, basically no white or yellow dots, and we get another strong tick like this, you'll notice one other thing. If you're an astute MIT tick user, get a tick to spy price divergence. So very strong signal. We break back in, no trend, but that's a good enough signal for me to try for a mean reversion, either TiWAP, yesterday's TiWAP, or a complete deviation reversal up to the first standard deviation high in this case, because we're at lows. So this was a great entry as well, and this strong engulf here tests back below first standard deviation, and then we get our entry. Taking that all the way to first deviation high gets you another $1.50. If you're confident and you have a runner, you can even try to grab the daily gap mid, which is about 267 there. It's a fantastic setup. And then lo and behold, we start to show weakness right around the daily gap. We get that daily gap weakness, and we start to see some engulfs breaking back below in the first standard deviation high. Also take note, when we get this strong push to the daily gap, that's when AD starts to push into the bullish area. We had that bullish SMA flip to guide us up there, but then we get these high ticks and we start to downtrend on tick average closures. Meanwhile, volume has never left the bearish area. It did flip its 20 SMA bullish, but has started to flip its 20 SMA back to a bearish sentiment right as SPY is failing to clear this gap up here. We get our tick average closures crossing under zero at about 245, and we get that engulf signal right here. The next thing that I'll point out is we get flat tick, another divergence, at which point we start to break down. So this was another fantastic trade. You had a couple different entries. If you wanted to take the anticipatory entry, you could have gotten in on this engulf. You would have probably maybe sweat a little bit as the next immediate candle tests that strength right there at standard deviation. Or, and there's a reason we bounce here, I'll show you later, we get another fantastic entry right here. This TiWAP level, boom, tests it, couldn't hold, nice engulf candle takes out these here. You can grow all the way to previous TiWAP. You even get back into this band, which had shown some strength earlier in the afternoon session here. Perfect setup. We even get an extreme closure right here at 354. So just a great day all around for scalping this range. Turning the tick levels on, you can see this strong tick level at the top, defending that gap from the bulls. And this engulf crushes this bear tick level, another engulf right at this bear tick level. So very strong continuation setup. And once you see an engulf that fails, and then another engulf that was able to overcome that level, that's a strong reversal setup. So we had it once here on this one, and then we have one here on this one. It's great setup. Now look at these fades right into these tick levels. Strong engulfs right through these tick levels. It needs that strength in order to break through. So overall, it's a fantastic day for scalping. Not a fantastic day for anybody holding upside. So this area right here around 310, what was going on here? We'll go look at our monthly and weekly TiWAP analysis, and you can see right on this area, around 3 o'clock, all these wicks are right around the weekly TiWAP. So we'd spent an immense amount of time. Once we engulfed the weekly TiWAP, we retest monthly first standard deviation low, and we come all the way down to a prior weekly TiWAP level at 445.35. We bank on that, and we go all the way back. We oscillate and retest weekly TiWAP, and we make it all the way back to the first standard deviation low previous weekly TiWAP value of 448.73. That's also what we rejected with this bullish engulf at 10 o'clock. So these levels continue to prove to be just fantastic scalp ranges or signals for a potential reversal. But weekly TiWAP was basically what we halted on today before we had that retest, and then we made it right back down to that second deviation weekly TiWAP price, 445.35. Now I'm going to turn on second deviation, continue to drag the monthly TiWAP down, the weekly TiWAP down. We're not really making any progress. Now, my hope was that that this level here we'd be far away from, and that would be our weekly low. But I'm really on the fence as to what we're going to do for the rest of the week. We could have made our weekly high on Monday, and we're just going to continue to melt down or consolidate for the rest of this week. It could be that 445 is our weekly low, and that we'll maybe consolidate sideways or try to test monthly TiWAP. I'm not really sure. I don't have much of an analysis beyond that. The Qs are continually selling off, and they're not making near the same consolidation structure that the SPY is. They're much weaker in that, we continue to make a lower low. So SPY held its low from yesterday, and Q made a new low and almost finished basically right around there. As far as the Russ is concerned, Russ is consolidating. They held their lows from yesterday, but they're having the same struggle that SPY is having. Now their monthly TiWAP is 194, but we're far away from there. We're well within the second deviation low on the monthly. Taking a look at Dow, I believe it's much the same as Russ. So the Dow is pretty flat like SPY, but yeah, they're in the second deviation low on the monthly. Heading over to our TRIN. So TRIN today finally broke this pattern of extreme bearishness with a breakdown towards the end of the day. This time we started in the bull zone for just a brief moment. There's that balance we saw with MIT. Then we break into bear zone and then kind of flatten out right below it for the rest of the day. Here's our price. So here's that tight range I spoke of. And honestly, we pretty much had that same range all day. We only had a couple peaks out below and above. So not much of a direction, in my opinion. The volume, I'm going to say, for the most part, the volume had a slight downtrend, but maybe it's expanding a little bit. We did end in the bear zone. If I turn extended trading hours on, we printed a couple more downside candles, but there's just not much strength on either side. One thing to note, I've been watching this quite a lot lately, is VIX. Brought this up on Twitter or X a handful of times now, is that we are starting to hang out above 15 on the VIX. So prior in July, every time we were around 15 towards the end, 15 and 14, we started to push back below. Now we're starting to spike back up. So is this the market preparing for CPI data? I'm unsure. I am really unsure. But it does appear as though we're starting to stay above 15, which means that we could start to see a little bit more of a higher VIX environment. I think if 15 is going to stick, then our next target is going to be 20. So if we look at 20, we can see many times 20 has been the floor when we were already higher. And then in other periods where we were low, 20 was the ceiling. So if we're going to hang out here above 15 and we think more volatility is entering the market, I would want to see the 20 break first. Obviously, volatility could come in and bring it to 20, but then what happens when we get to 20 could be a violent rejection. Difficult to say. So that's pretty much summing up this market today. Crazy market. I wish it would pick a direction. Looking at chips, very interesting to see chips struggle, but the AI craze is potentially over. The high valuations of NVIDIA definitely have been walked back. I think NVIDIA is okay. Yeah, they're still above 400. They definitely were slaughtered today. Man, what a drop. That would have been nice. I know Apple is still weak. They did almost make a 180, but they didn't quite get there. Remember, they were almost at 200, not just a couple weeks back before their earnings. Consumer discretionary was higher there for a bit, but they're starting to give some of that back. I know energy has been on the rise. So energy sometimes can be a hedge, in my experience anyways, against the market. And yeah, certain energy companies have been on the rise, and it's being reflected in XLE. All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Basically, headed into tomorrow, I'm just going to use the intraday data. If it's a bullish set of numbers, it could be still a sell-off, but given how much downside we've been seeing here, I'm hopeful if the numbers are decent, then maybe we'll see some upside, and perhaps then we can have somewhat of a confirmation that we've made our lows for the week. So I think it would be great to see some relief. Anyways, I hope you did well today. If you've got any questions on these indicators or the market internals, feel free to drop me a message over at X, hit me up on YouTube. Would love to hear from you, your feedback, or any great trades that you've had using any of this information. Yeah, would really be great to hear. Other than that, have a wonderful evening. And as always, thank you for watching and happy trading.